You coming along with your instruments? Let's see.
Well, I have some questions because I wrote some questions for the question,
Okay.
and I also designed the observation sheet that is like no big deal because
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
simple. But I don't know. Like, I'm not sure about the question. I have these, but basically it's like I don't know.
Okay, I'm just looking here at your research questions. How many teachers are you planning on applying the
The
questionnaire?
questionnaire,
More or less.
maybe like I don't know, 6, 7, maybe, so I can get 2 or 3.
Okay. Are you looking at different schools or the same school? What schools are you
I
considering?
was thinking here in the university. I was thinking also there's a teacher for basic education in my school, but I was thinking like for 6th grade.
Okay.
And maybe to apply the instruments. I was thinking also. I'm planning to contact a teacher that I know that he gives classes to teenagers, like in 17 de hecho por ahí.
Okay. And how many do you think you'll choose? 2? How many different teachers do you think you'll choose for your study?
For my study, like 2.
Just 2, right?
Yeah, 2 depending, like,
Yeah.
on the information
results.
that I get.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at your question.
But I don't know. It's like I was making the questions, and
Okay.
I was like,
Not sure.
I don't have to mention like my topic, but I have to like to get if they have problems. I mean, some.
Yeah, in your case, since you're looking at giving instructions and you really don't want to reveal too much about your research, you may not even have to mention that you're focusing on instructions, that you're just focusing on maybe just problems that they have or let's take a look here. So the first thing I would suggest looking here at your survey is at the beginning I would include a heading, and in the heading I would begin with some sort of title. So you might include like maybe the name of the our university here where you're doing your research, the language department. If you have a logo, it's nice to see the logo on there, but that's optional. After you have the heading, then you're going to want to include some information that the teacher fills out. So any independent variables that you want to include, for example, their name perhaps, where they work, the institution. If you want to ask questions or if you want to know their age, gender, years of working at the university, years of experience, educational level, this is all optional. But whatever information that you think will, one, help you choose the best candidate for your study, and the information that you think you'll later need when you consider the rest of your data collection techniques, that's the information that I would include at the very top. But think of it like independent variables, that is age and things that are fixed, that provide context for the teacher or the group. It may also include the level that they're teaching, or how many groups do they have, for example, because that may be helpful if you're looking at teachers that maybe have a lot of groups versus one teacher that only has one group, whatever. So just consider any information that you would consider as an independent variable, as the examples that we're mentioning here, include those at the very top in blanks where the teacher can fill that out very quickly, but at the very top. After you have that information, below that I would include an introduction. Introduce yourself, use your full name, say you're a student here at the university and you're doing research for part of a thesis class, and and then the purpose, I would just very briefly say that you're interested in learning more about the dynamic, the classroom dynamic, or the problems teachers face in the class. Just kind of keep it open.
Okay.
And then the final sentence give instructions. Please complete the following questions to the best of your ability or as completely as possible. This information, you might include information, a statement that this information will be held confidential.
Confidentially.
Yeah.
That was
Or
more or
maybe you
less,
have that.
like,
Yeah.
more or
So
less.
okay. So basically, that's what I would include in the heading. Now, let's see. How many questions do you have?
Well, like 10, but I.
Alright. Okay,
I doubt of some.
All right. So we have how much time do you have? How much time? Okay. So how long have you been teaching? Right. That's the question number one.
Uh-huh.
So that I would consider that as an independent variable. So if that is important information, maybe at the top say something like years of experience or years of teaching, or and then they could just fill that out at the top. What problems do you face when you're in front of the group? All right, so actually this would be question one. If we move the other question number one that you have up, and I would move question two to question one. Do your students express the problems they face in your classes? All right. And what problems do you think your students face? All right. I would combine question 3 and 4 and say, if your students express problems with you about their classes, what have they shared with you? So kind of a conditional sentence. If they do this. If they don't, then the teacher can just put NA or that they don't answer anything, but you can combine those two sentences.
For the teacher to answer either yes or no.
Right, so we combine it, so you're not asking one question yes or no, and then another question which actually is not exactly the same. What problems do you think your students face is different than what have your students expressed to you if that has happened. And so here's what you could do. You could say, how do your students express to you their concerns, their problems in class? If they don't express these problems, what problems do you think they have? So now I would put two questions into the one, but label it as one question. And so regardless, they should be able to fill out one of the two.
Yeah.
So that would be question number 2 there. Now your question number 5, what do you usually do to overcome, so what do you usually do to overcome these problems? Okay. And number 6, do your students understand you when you give explanations in English? What I would ask more generally, when are there can maybe ask them to explain times when their students had problems understanding you.
Okay.
Instead of using the words explanations, which almost sounds like introduction, or you could just say, explain times, if any, where your students had problems understanding you, or when do students typically have problems understanding what you say? And I would say that understand what you say, so you limit it to spoken dialogue, so you don't start getting information about written instructions or whatever, or on exam, they're reading an exam and they don't understand. It's like keeping it just, to spoken dialogue.
Yes.
And how often do you have to repeat information in order? All right, maybe we can leave that question out because I think the prior question will cover that. So, like, what do you do, like, when your students don't understand you? Right. So. Again, question 8. I think we can leave that out. You asked, do you use any aid that helps you make yourself understood? You're looking for that information, but you don't want to guide them too much. And I think if they explain, because you want to try to leave a little bit of space on your questionnaire so they can fill it out. So what I'm trying to do is see if there's ways we can limit the number of questions and add a little bit more space. Obviously, I can use the back of it, but ideally, if you could keep it to one page, it's going to be easier for you when you distribute it out, and plus it won't be so long for the teacher to fill out. From which of the following options have you used to help students understand? Okay. And in which of the following options do you usually have more problems?
But
Yeah. I think we can also take out question 9 and 10 and limit to just those few, like maybe how many? 4 or 5 questions here.
4 or 5.
Maybe 6.
Oh, okay.
But just focusing on a general question at the end, when explain a situation or a common situation where your students had problems understanding and how you resolved that. What did you do? So you're really looking for a good description, and hopefully they'll mention some of these things that you're looking for that you're asking specifically. So I think that would be the best route. That way they leave. When they finish the questionnaire, they really don't know exactly what you're looking for.
Okay.
So then when you do choose those teachers, you can begin observing. And in your case, I would recommend not doing an interview before you observe. I would observe first so that they really aren't sure exactly what you're going to do. And I think we talked about this before, and even possibly waiting until the very end depends on how the observations go. But if you can wait till the end to do your interviews, then they're really not going to know exactly what you're going to be observing, which I think would be a good thing, so they're not really making an effort. She's watching me to see how I give instructions. I'm going to give instructions in a different way.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's think about
like
applying as many as you can. Now, I don't think you have to. We have a time frame here, but if you can, apply. Tell me again what schools you're thinking about. Are you thinking about here at the university
here
or
in
not?
the university, yeah.
I mean, if you're thinking about like in lenguas extranjeras or
maybe in both. I'm going to ask the teachers if they work with Fomento or Extensión.
Okay, so I'm just thinking, for example, you could come on one Saturday and probably find
many teachers.
A few teachers. Now you would have to kind of schedule and come like at the beginning of the class or during the break or after to try to not inconvenience them with a questionnaire right in the middle of their class. So I wouldn't necessarily do that, but try to limit. The idea here too is try to reduce the number of questions so they don't feel that it's a big burden to spend a long time to fill this out. So I think this questionnaire, as it ends up, should last maybe 15-20 minutes, or should take them 15 or 20 minutes to complete, which I think would be reasonable. Anything more than that might be a little bit like less of a pain. Yeah. And if they feel that way when they do the questionnaire, reminds me, the last question in your questionnaire, you should ask them if they're willing to participate in the study. And be specific. Would you be willing to have me observe your class, participate in 2 to 3 interviews, and use this data from the questionnaire in my research? And just give them yes or no. And they would just give you kind of authorization. This is important too because and it's important that you list out all the possible ways of, like, record your class. If you're going to record the class, which I think you are, you need to also include that. Do you mind if I observe your class, if I record your class, interviews, and so that they kind of know what they're getting themselves into, and they have an option to either agree or opt out.
Okay.
And so I think you've got it.
And well, I'm going to ask for the observation sheet and everything, because I just got it like a small table.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have just time description like you told me and 3 maybe.
It could even be more basic than that. Are you going to do it on the computer when you observe, or are you going to?
No, I'm going to print it out write it.
Okay, what I would recommend is only include the first, you have time and description. I would also add a third one. I would add time and then activity and then description. And in the activity, you just categorize it however, whatever makes sense to you. But it just gives you kind of a general category of what it is. And then the description is where you're writing. But I would only include in your actual template one instance of time, activity, and description, and then leave the rest blank. Because you don't know how much space you're going to need to write. So when you finish one section, then just write it yourself. Time, activity, description. Just write it out or just abbreviate, whatever is easiest. But that way you're not confined to that space, and then you have to turn it over, and then A, B, and then it gets kind of crazy. So you could just have one format like that, and maybe have copies. So if you need a second page, So that would be the only recommendation I would make for that instrument.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So we have our observation sheets, we have our questionnaires.
And the interviews right after the observation.
Right, and if, just a review again for the interview guide, think about questions that directly come from your observations. So some of the questions that you're going to include will be, and you can anticipate some of the questions are going to be related to your research questions. And in your interview guide, I would include your research questions somewhere on the page to remind you. Look at those again right before your interview. Say, okay, what am I focusing on? Okay, and then I would list out a few general questions that you want to ask, but pertaining to what you saw. Think of all the questions as really two types. One could be questions like, what do you do when this happens? This is like a general question, like your common practice, what do you typically do? The second type of question is a question directly related to what they did in class. So I noticed you did this in class. Why did you do this in class? So now you're saying, you're not asking what they usually do. You're asking, why did they do that one thing that one day at that particular time? So your interview guide should be questions more directed towards those type of questions about what you observed.
Like more specific.
Right. Think of the questionnaire in general more about what they typically do.
Okay.
See? So when you're in the interview, you may end up asking both types of questions, but you really want to focus on what you observed because you really want to understand what the teacher was thinking and why they did this one thing and the context of what you observed so that you can complement what you observed, what the teacher said, maybe what the students say. You're not in this case, you're not interviewing the students. So basically you're going to have the questionnaire. What did the teacher say in the questionnaire? What did you observe, and what did they tell you in the interview? Okay, and so that's I think that's one thing that I would that I would consider. Now, when you're if you choose two teachers from the same school, you have another option in case you need it, in case you feel you need a little bit more information to answer your research questions. You could do a focus group if it's the same.
A focus group.
Yeah, just as an option. So, you're going to be collecting data, and when you feel that you have enough data to answer your research questions, then fine. But always ask yourself, and kind of, analyze as you go, and ask yourself, do I have enough information, or do I need maybe one more observation or one more interview to find out a little bit more about something that you saw?
The focus group is like talking with the teachers.
Right. And it's very much like the interview, except you have two teachers, and you have both teachers there, and you're asking similar types of questions. And even if you feel you're repeating yourself, sometimes when they get in groups, they are sharing more information, maybe. Or maybe they just brainstorm and they help each other remind them about certain things. And so sometimes you can get additional information. And sometimes they feel more comfortable when they're in groups. Sometimes people feel more comfortable one-on-one. So what you're trying to do is get them in both situations.
Mhm.
So hopefully they will give you enough information, right, to be useful.
Okay.
So just think of it as an option.
That's enough.
And we don't have to decide right now if you have to do that, but yeah, I think we can think of in terms of the questionnaire, your observations, and the interview at this point.
Yeah.
And you pretty much have it ready. I would go ahead and apply your questionnaire whenever you can. Take a look at the results, and again, the more that you can apply, the better, right? But do your best to try to get out as many as possible so that you can go back and have a wider range to select from, so you can choose hopefully some good participants there that will give you good information.
Okay.
Okay. What else? Anything else?
Because I was correcting my late review also.
Okay.
Starting to write. We have until May, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had one question from for example here.
What page?
I was talking about repetition page. It says the five of 16. Like at the
Page
very
16?
top.
Page 16? Or no, I'm sorry,
5.
which? 5. Okay.
5. It says can you provide more evidence or repetition? With another quotation.
Can you provide more evidence about repetition? Okay. All right, so I got the idea from repetition from your topic sentence. And so when I read the topic sentence, a common situation a language teacher faces when giving instructions involves the use of repetition. So I'm about to read a paragraph that is going to explain something about the what, the how, the why of giving instructions that involves repetition. So mentions that repetition.
Actually, I changed the claim. I erased the comment because I corrected it.
Okay.
And I reworded the claim, and I wrote the language teacher commonly faces the use of repetition.
All right. So in this case, when I read this, this is as an example. You have one sentence at the beginning that explains, mentions that repetition is, or paraphrase, is necessary information. So your 1991 is explaining here, you're providing evidence that explains kind of the rationale, the purpose of repetition. But you might include, because that's the only citation you have. And we want to have at least one citation in paragraphs, but sometimes we need more, right? So here you might ask first, you might provide evidence, some sort of citation that an author explains what is repetition, what is an example of a repetition, right? So now you're explaining the what first. So typically you explain the what first, or at least the how. How can you apply this repetition? Well, you can apply it by direct repetition, saying the same thing, or whatever. But you have an expert. And so whenever I mention evidence, what I'm referring to are citations. And you don't, in most of your paragraphs you have, you have good evidence here, but this one particular paragraph, I felt like you could add a little bit more, because I felt like you kind of jumped here with to explaining how, and then however instructions, then you have 1, 2, 3 sentences. However, instructions are not understood, so repeating part of the process and helping students understand. Additionally, I felt like you were using more, you're analyzing more, and that I felt like you could provide a little bit more evidence. The trick is to try to balance the evidence and the analyze. Think of the analyze as you commenting on the evidence. So it would be like you saying one fact and then you commenting a lot about this one little fact. And so you kind of want to have a good balance between those two, right? And then the last sentence would be like a linking sentence from one sentence to the next. So. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
And I have one question because I didn't understand this one. This one it was in the same page. It says, I would comment on this evidence before ending this paragraph with a linking sentence.
What number, comment number is that?
Is number, yeah, page 5.
Oh, 19. I would create, no. Um, it's on page 5?
Yeah. It says.
Okay, I would comment on this evidence.
Before ending this paragraph with a linking sentence because I have. Well, the explicit.
All right, so you have your topic sentence, then you have evidence, then you have analyze, for instance. Okay, so when you present evidence, try your best to always comment later on that evidence.
Okay.
So if you look at any paragraph, any body paragraph, whatever the last evidence sentence, whatever last citation you have, you know you're going to have 2 more sentences at least. One sentence to comment on it, an analyze sentence, and you know the last sentence is going to be a linking sentence. So in this example, you have an evidence sentence, a citation, then you have 1 more sentence that that concludes the paragraph. So you're either missing the analyze sentence or you're missing the linking sentence. See what I mean?
Yeah, because I have here like one citation, then I think like I'm analyzing, and then there is another citation. That is what being polite is the last thing to consider if this is actually a citation.
Right. And then after that citation, the second citation, you only have 1 more sentence.
Yeah. Okay.
So you know you're either missing an analyze or a
like
link.
Evidence, it's like evidence, analyze, and then a linking sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So what you don't want is to leave like an example and then not comment on it. So you really want to try to comment on it and then link it. Type of thing.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And these are small things, you know.
Yeah.
It was well written, but I think with some of these comments, you can make it improve it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking at them
Okay.
to see what I can add, what I can take out, what I can change.
And sometimes it's just a matter of rearranging. So,
Yeah,
for example, in this case, maybe you just bring this evidence up, and this comment that you have, you bring it down and change it and comment on both of them. Right? So maybe you don't even have to add another sentence. Move it around, and then maybe adjust. In this case, your commenting sentence, your analyze sentence, to include both evidence.
Okay. Well, basically.
Yeah.
Basically that
Is that it? Any other questions about my comments or feedback?
Well, I haven't looked at all of them. It's like
Okay.
I'm going like.
I think your APA is okay. I don't know if you have questions about APA.
Yeah, what I'm going to check is why I didn't add that. One of them that you told me that wasn't included in the document. It was like, I swear I included it, but maybe I erased it. And
okay. Okay, so
I'm
check
going
it. Yeah,
check that information.
and I may have missed it. You know, sometimes I didn't see it, but
and it is not there. Maybe when
Okay.
I was like modifying the information, I
Yeah,
took it away
it
and
happens.
I didn't took it away from the list.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you took it out and you don't need it, then just remove it from your references as long as you have enough. You know, you have the minimum number of references, and just bring the indentation over too. It looks like your indentation's a little bit over to the left. You need to bring it over, and if you see,
yes.
and and then the second line should be a half an inch over.
Why?
Yeah, as long as it's okay on your Google Drive. You know, maybe it changed when I exported it.
Actually questions about one.
In fact, let me see that. Let me see if that was. Okay, see, so this may have changed. So it looks okay on your Google Drive. All right, so just disregard. Yeah, just disregard that because it looks fine here.
the format because we like copy and paste like from
Yeah,
Word to Google.
exactly.
And, like,
You might look at your space between references and your first
it
because
has,
you
like,
want it to be equal space. So it looks
Yeah.
like you probably can get rid of some of this, like right here. Yeah, you have space.
double space.
Well, you have like before and after 5. So I think if you change that, it'll bring things in.
Okay.
But yeah. And you have, I just noticed this, you have page numbers at the top or at the bottom. If you want to keep page numbers at the top, that's fine. Just eliminate your footer. You don't need to have both here. So actually, this is the better way to do it as you have it here, having the page number at the top right-hand corner of your screen. You can delete the footer if you want.
Okay.
But either way, I don't think you need to have both. But since you already have in your header, I would just delete
I
it.
have one question in the one at the very bottom that has verbal. No tiene que decir como running head on the very first. Oh, it is not necessary.
Technically, yes, it should, but to go in and explain the header page, format it one way, and then format it
another way.
I think we're okay.
We're okay. I just have one question because I did that last semester and I had like in the very first page running head in the.
Or maybe I'll explain it. I've got a video that explains how to do that, but it's in Word, so I haven't said much about it because we're working in Google Drive. But for right now, I think that's.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Okay.
What else? Anything else?
Well, so far so good.
Okay. All right. Well, if you have questions about the results, once you have your results for the questionnaire, if you want to discuss them before our tutoring session next Friday, come by at my office. We can look at them. But I would try to go ahead and apply those as soon as possible. So we're going to start the third week. We have basically 2 more weeks technically for our instrument design before we start the data collection. So preferably
we start before.
So just let me know, if you want to look and discuss something before a tutoring session, so we can hopefully start the data collection process maybe a week early. That'd be nice.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Good.
Okay. All right.
Thank
you. See you later. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.